Welcome to Dimensional Shift, where we explore and actively deprogram ourselves, seek the truth of reality through expanding our perceptions, and focus on full remembrance of our true selves. As we begin to connect to our true selves, we will also see the truth of this illusory reality and the way it controls us through our manipulated perceptions. As soon as we fully remember our true selves, we will also see the enemy for what it is and how to rebalance the system by freeing ourselves and assisting others to do the same, creating a domino effect into the evolution of human consciousness. Welcome back to Dimensional Shift. Today we're going to be talking about free will, the age-old question. What is free will and do we have it? So we can't start a discussion about free will unless we first talk about what we mean by will. If you do just a search of what's the definition of will, you get like 11 definitions, and there's actually 2 different entries for the word will. So there's a will 1 and a will 2. There's will as a verb and there's will as a noun. Some of them are sort of unimportant. They're talking about future tense and they're talking about the legal document for when someone passes away, things like that we can disregard. But if we look into the other definitions, it kind of boils down into 3 really important ideas for what we're talking about. There's the mastery of self, particularly of the mind, and the faculties by which we make decisions. There's the use of will, which refers to a desire or a wish, and that goes into our intentions and beliefs. And there's also this idea of that which desires or ordains. And this typically refers to something like God's will. So if we're going back to the mastery of the self, particularly the mind, and the faculties by which we make decisions, this is where we can start to talk about outside influences. Something that I've been exploring very deeply is how everything in our reality can be used as medicine or as an opportunity for healing. So while we aren't responsible for other people's realities, the things they do, say, think, feel, whatever it is, there is an element of being responsible for why that person is in our lives doing the things that they're doing. So this is complex, and it goes into this idea of the victim, which we've talked about before and all of that. But it kind of refers to this idea of don't be afraid of your demons. Be afraid of allowing your unconsciousness to continue to manifest as demons. There's a reason that everything is in your reality, and it has to do with this idea of resonance. When you go into an ayahuasca ceremony, you are often presented with visuals, manifestations of your fears. And people talk about the jesters, they talk about the clowns and all of this. It's a visual representation of your fears. And there truly is nothing to be afraid of except for the fear. There's nothing to fear but fear itself. Very cliche at this point, right? But it's sort of this gateway of having to learn how to push past that fear. It's the same kind of thing with these, quote, demons that we have in our lives, these outside energies that we feel like influence us. And the only way out is through. I keep having this visual of Neo at the end of the first Matrix movie when he realizes he's the one, and instead of continuing to fight the demons, he literally goes into the demon and transmutes it from the inside in a way. That's the only way that we can work through these demons, is to take it within ourselves, find out how it's a mirror, find out what within us is allowing that to continue to manifest in our reality. Because once we heal it, it doesn't come back. Things that we don't heal cycle back around through our lives. There's also the faculties by which we make decisions. This deals really deeply with the subconscious. The subconscious part of our brain runs something like 60 to 70% of our lives. Literally, like it's the pattern that your day flows through. When you're driving and you're not thinking about driving, that's your subconscious that's driving the car. When you go into the kitchen and grab a bite to eat, it's your subconscious that tells you you're hungry and that you should go into the kitchen to eat unless you're very conscious about it. And this, I feel like, goes back to this idea that people don't see the programs that's running their lives. All of those programs are in your subconscious. Being able to dive into your subconscious and pull out all of those programs and look at them and pick them apart and decide if you want to be able to keep them is a very big part of reclaiming your free will. As we go into the idea of desires and wishes, and we start talking about beliefs, this is the programs that are in our subconscious, these beliefs that we have about the way society is supposed to operate, the way that people are supposed to operate, the way that we're supposed to operate. And this is literally operating the reality that we have. When we have these beliefs running our lives, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily a good thing, and it doesn't even mean that they're true. A belief is something that we've accepted from somebody else as truth. Truth means that we have experienced it or realized it for ourselves. Beliefs mean that maybe somebody else has or hasn't. They could just be making it up, but you have accepted that as truth. There's an interesting aspect in here about the idea of intentions. And in certain esoteric and mystical circles, they talk about setting intentions, and they talk about magic and how magic is all willpower. And it's really quite true, because when you set an intention, you're consciously choosing a belief because you haven't experienced it as truth yet. It's not truth because it hasn't been put into your reality. You haven't experienced it. It's a belief that you are inserting into your subconscious through your conscious mind to create into your reality. Intentions can be really powerful when properly chosen, but not all intentions will be able to overcome the beliefs and programs that you already have in your subconscious. This is how affirmations, through repetition, can become beliefs in your subconscious, or can become planted into your subconscious to manifest into your reality. And all this is putting the program into your subconscious so that you can start creating that in your everyday life without consciously thinking about it all the time. The last definition is that which desires or ordains. Now we have to start talking about the egoic self and the God self. And this is really kind of a complex issue that I haven't fully figured out how to talk about yet. So we have the egoic self. It's basically the character that we have in this life. These are the stories that we tell ourselves about who we are, what we're doing here, all of that. The ego is particularly susceptible to outside influence because it's always me versus. In order to define the ego, it feels like it has to have an other. That's why as we move into the transcendent self, we have the ego abandonment or the egoic structure abandonment. So we have others' will, the ego's will, and we have God's will. From what I have remembered and understood is the original sin was believing that we know better than God. How exactly that happened, I don't know, but that seems to be the humans stepping out of the natural cycle of the ecosystems and all of that and believing that we are God on earth in a certain sense. So we have the ego, which is the character here that we play on earth, and we have the transcendent self, which many of us have been experiencing, going back into that void of awareness and glimpsing the God self in that awareness. The problem becomes then when the ego still wants to control the destiny of realizing that transcendent self. We think of destiny a lot of the times as kind of being the opposite of free will. The misconception lies in who has free will. Does the ego have free will? Well, the ego doesn't actually exist in the way that it thinks it does. This human life doesn't actually have the life that it thinks it does. And so what does the ego want that would not be aligned with God's will? It wants control. Now we're back to the original sin. So why is this idea of destiny a bad thing? If the ego is being drawn back to the transcendent self, to the God self, to the God realization, how is that a bad thing, except for the fact that the ego sort of perishes in the process? Because these ideas are so intertwined. So it's just that the ego wants control. It wants to believe that it has the free will and not God. And this is why God can only operate by invitation. At the end of Christopher Eccleston's season of Doctor Who, which I think is season 9 if I'm remembering correctly. It's been quite a while since I've seen it. But Rose realizes throughout the whole of that season that she has been this person leaving these symbols of the bad wolf this whole time. And sometimes there's these elements of destiny that come in and they just hit you. And you do realize that in a certain sense, they're clues you've been leaving for yourself that welcome you back, invite you back onto the path that you are meant to take. After I ended up going to Colombia in December, I was looking back through my life and I can see every step where that invitation was put in, and it was like stepping stones that led me to that exact place. And so if I had an issue with the idea of destiny because destiny doesn't feel like free will, then yeah, I can see how it would be very unsettling. But when you reach that transcendent self, you can see that you are the one guiding you back the whole time. Well, then you're just trying to decide, well, who has the free will? So yes, there is free will after you get rid of all the programming and you realize that you are basically inviting yourself back to yourself in a certain sense. I keep speaking about the transcendent self as the void, the awareness, and there's this element of bringing it back to the dream that I've been working on personally that I don't have a lot of great words for. But if we have the transcendent self, which is the self you find when you close your eyes and you meditate and you go within yourself, there's also this element of the immanent self, which is when you are embodying that God self with your eyes open, living their day-to-day life. And we think about these great teachers that we've had, these enlightened teachers that we've had throughout all of the ages. And that is the only reason that we know that they are the great teachers, is because they have that immanent self. They have found that inner self and they found their willpower within them. And now they are manifesting it and bringing it forward into the world. And when they have reclaimed that and are bringing it into the world, it's very, very recognizable. A lot of things start to shift around them that people notice. So the last note I will make is this idea of not my will be done, but thy will be done. Surrendering the egoic constructs, the structures, so that we can find the center of the labyrinth and find ourselves as the center of the labyrinth. And this is why God is so personal. This is why beliefs about God are so harmful, because when you have a belief, again, that's not your truth. It's somebody else's truth that you have accepted as a belief. And now you have somebody else's truth running your life in a subconscious way. So go ahead and discard that. Discard everything I've said. Don't listen to me. Go in and meditate upon it and see if what I've said makes any sense. And if it doesn't, discard it. Don't let what I say become a belief. Experience it for yourself. If you found this episode helpful or insightful, please share it with a friend and leave a review or comment. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I host twice weekly open discussions on the podcast topic on our Discord server. If you'd like to join, head to dimensionalshifter.com/Discord. If you're on Reddit, come join the subreddit r/dimensionalshifters or send me a DM. My username is Dimensional Shifter. Keep deprogramming, keep connecting, keep listening to your intuition. This is it. This is what we've been searching for our whole lives. Connection to our true selves.